Welcome to Disrupt Health Tech, the podcast where we dive deep into the innovations transforming healthcare. I'm your host, Wendy Austin, and today's segment is a part of a 6-part series titled Building Health Tech from Concept to Care. Within 6 episodes, we'll peel back the layers of what it truly takes to bring groundbreaking health technology to life, from the initial spark of the idea through vigorous clinical validation, smart product management, strategic sales, effective marketing, and powerful analytics. We'll cover the entire life cycle. So whether you're an entrepreneur, an investor, a healthcare professional, or simply curious about the future of medicine, this is your essential guide to understanding how health tech moves from visionary concept all the way to delivering real-world care. Let's get started. Tuning in to another episode of Disrupt Health Tech. I am your host, Wendy Austin, and today we're going to talk about where the healthcare industry is going, and in particular, where health tech will be in the future. Discussing this topic with me today is Dr. Jon Belsher, who recently served as the president and CEO of UCI Medical Affiliates. Dr. Belsher, you have a long background as a physician executive in the health tech industry, as well as an advisor to health tech companies. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about your company, Visura?
You bet. It's a pleasure to be here, Wendy. Thank you for having me on. My name is Jon Belsher. I'm a trained physician and former military service member. I served as a flight surgeon for a number of years. And during this period of time in my career, I was very focused on impacting healthcare as much as I could. I've helped build a number of companies and also run a number of, help run a number of more mature companies. And after these diverse and rich experiences, I have the pleasure today of helping early stage companies and growth stage companies develop their strategies to become successful.
Yes, very good. So from a healthcare professional point of view, what do you think the biggest achievement in healthcare has been to date?
Not surprisingly, you probably won't be terribly surprised. I would say it's the digitization of healthcare. All of the technology that's been introduced over the last 20 and 25 years, 30 years even, have really improved healthcare, how we go about it. Includes such things as imaging and genomics and remote patient monitoring, all different types of techniques that we're now using in healthcare today that we did not use previously. The other really exciting thing for me, besides the digitization of healthcare, is the personalization of healthcare, meaning that with the data and the technology that we're using today, we're getting closer and closer to using all this, and actually are using it in certain circumstances today to tailor healthcare by individual instead of by group or subset or large studies. We're taking the data and we're saying, based on who you are and how you're made up, we believe this is the best solution for you from a treatment standpoint.
So where do you think we failed in healthcare?
Well, I probably won't have many people disagreeing with me when I say we're still really siloed in healthcare. We've talked about interoperability for a long time. We've made great strides. We're not there yet. The paradox is we're creating more and more data. So we have a very data-rich environment, but it still is sort of segmented or fragmented or siloed, if you will. We haven't done as good of a job as we need to do connecting all the data together, especially as it's been growing over the last 10, 15 years, and making sure that we can access it in an easy and streamlined way.
Yeah, so with that, let's talk about the advancements of AI and machine learning, which is, if anything, making more data and piling onto the problem. So where do you think healthcare will be in the future, and maybe both, look at it from a 10-year perspective as well as even further out into 50 years?
You bet. So it's really a force multiplier in my mind, where we only see the tip of the iceberg, in my view, today in terms of what AI and ML will ultimately do. It's not a panacea in terms of solving all of our woes and ills, but it will be a force multiplier, something that dramatically improves the way we're able to render healthcare and go about it. I think over the next 10 years or so, as it's begun doing today, it will act as a co-pilot. It'll help us with clinical documentation,
Right.
and different treatment options and things of that nature, with the physician or the provider still in charge of making the ultimate decision along with the patient about what's best for them. So the analogy I like to use is sort of a co-pilot over the next 10 years. I think by 50 years out, it could become more based on preventative and predictive healthcare, whereby it's taking data and it's actually determining in advance what the likelihood is of someone developing something, what they need today. So we get upstream in healthcare where we should be around preventive care, wellness, et cetera. And it's really helping us identify far in advance who's going to need what to prevent potentially what's going to happen downstream to them. Again, all of this is not with the system running autonomously. I've got to underscore that I do think that at the end of the day, healthcare is built around trust and empathy and human connections. And I think well into the future, healthcare will continue to be centered around that all-important patient-physician relationship.
So let's talk about your company, Visura, as a guide for health tech companies. What do you think health tech companies struggle with the most today?
Well, first I'll compliment health tech and med tech founders and CEOs. I've had the tremendous pleasure over a number of years of meeting some incredibly brilliant people, both here in the United States and around the world, many with their hearts and heads in the right places to try to improve the healthcare system, which is my North Star, if you will, or overarching goal in my career. I think there's a lot of driven and intelligent individuals looking at different facets of healthcare. I think some of the things they've solved for, the simple one is there have been times that I've seen someone with a solution looking for a problem, if you will. They've come up with some neat idea or fancy idea on paper, and then they've been looking around to think about, how do I apply this to healthcare? How does it solve something in healthcare? It's very important that it's done the other way around, that companies well define the problem they're solving for, and then build for that, if you will. The other issue I see often is with all these bright people who are looking at different facets of healthcare, there are times when a founder or a company will identify an interesting problem that is academically very interesting, if you will, but it's not necessarily impactful, or it's not as impactful as it is interesting. So it's important that it's not only interesting, say, to the team or the founder, but it's also important that it's impactful.
So can you describe something that's academic versus something that's impactful? Like maybe give an example of those?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So when it comes to defining or developing an impactful solution, there are two key components in my mind that have to be solved for. One is, does the solution have move the needle when it comes to clinical impact? Is it a nice to have, or is it a must have? And I think the solutions that we see that are particularly successful today are the must haves, if you will. These are things that are definitely going to improve patients' healthcare. They're needed, if you will, to address a fundamental issue, and they're not optional, if you will. Optionals may work, but the ones that do particularly well are the ones that fundamentally move the clinical needle. Not only does a solution need to move the clinical needle, but it has to move the financial needle too. It has to work with the P&L. It has to resonate with the C-suite and the board. Solutions that may move the needle clinically, but don't show the financial promise, may not have the sustainability to scale. And without sustainability through scale, it's harder for these solutions to get adopted.
We had talked previously about the different financial goals and patient engagement goals that healthcare companies need to balance. Let's have you dive into these two topics and explain how companies can achieve both goals.
The first way they need to achieve both goals is being very concrete and deliberate around these issues. I think that many times companies will end up toward one extreme or the other. Big clinical impact potentially, but have overlooked or haven't spent as much time around the financial piece of it, the reimbursement, how it's going to be paid for, et cetera. And then there's the other extreme, if you will, where the more focus is put out around financial incentives, reimbursement, payer coverage, et cetera, but maybe not as much as done around the clinical piece. I think when it comes to the clinical piece, the solutions need to be designed around the patient and importantly include clinicians in the development of the solution, if you will, versus developing it around the patient and the physician, if you will, and not taking into account how those relationships go at bedside. So from a clinical standpoint, it's incumbent that the solution is built around or involves the patient and the clinician or the physician in particular. The financial piece is the other piece, and it can't be left till the very end, if you will. I think as companies, especially early and growth stage companies, think about how will this solution be adopted and scale. It turns a lot on how is it going to be paid for or covered? How's it going to be reimbursed? What is it going to mean ultimately to the P&L and to the healthcare system, if you will? And so I work with companies on these two areas very closely because based on my years in healthcare, both at bedside and at desk side, as I like to say in the C-suite, I've developed a very nuanced appreciation and approach for how these two solutions are importantly solved for. And we make sure that the companies that we work with find this, I won't say elusive, but critical intersection as early as possible to maximize their chances of success.
All right, your company handles both early stage startups as well as more mature organizations that are looking for some tactical help. Can you expand upon the different needs of these health tech companies and in those early stages?
You bet. So like everything in life, early stage and growth stage companies have their own life cycle, if you will. Many times for a founder or a company, it starts on the back of a napkin with a friend or a colleague or someone, an inspiration. Many ideas, which gives me great satisfaction, emanate from someone's personal experience with healthcare, something that happened to them or one of their family members that caused them to think, there needs to be a solution here. There needs to be a better way that we do this in healthcare. And I love those type of solutions because they're being designed around someone's personal experience, which is not only great for the story, but adds a lot of emotion, if you will, to the development of the solution. For an early stage company, it's all about conceptualization of the idea, developing the initial solution, having a minimum viable product, if you will, and validating it. So early on, it's thinking about what does it look like? How do we build it? What does the MVP look like? And then making sure that the MVP isn't seen as something that we get one shot at this, but the MVP is going to be iterated, if you will, based on trials and feedback from the public. How are we going to adjust this solution going forward? Once a company gets that point and they're at MVP and they go to market, which is another area that cannot be overlooked and we focus on with companies, they become near revenue or post revenue, if you will. They start to develop revenue. And issues for those companies then change to a different set of dynamics. At this point, we're talking about scaling and operational efficiencies, marketing, team build out, et cetera. So they have a different set of needs than the very early stage company does. And we try to make sure that we fit like a puzzle piece in where the company needs us along this evolution of their journey, if you will.
So do you have any parting words about the future of healthcare, machine learning and AI technology, or even health tech in general?
Yeah, I'm excited. I thought that this revolution, if you will, in healthcare that has really been my goal to be part of in my life. I thought this would be somewhat short-lived, that we would be able to maybe remake or overhaul or improve the system in short order. It's very evident to me after being in this for some time that this will take a number of years. That shouldn't act as a deterrent to us, because I think it's an iterative process where every improvement, if you will, and every step we take forward is one step towards a better day in healthcare, if you will. So I'm very excited about what's going on. I think as technology continues to develop and we find new ways of improving healthcare, we'll focus more upstream in healthcare to wellness, if you will, and preventive care, so that we won't be reflexive in treating people after they get sick or after they have a problem, but we're doing it a lot sooner. And I think as long as we continue to develop solutions and the system, keeping in mind that empathy and trust and that human relationship forms the foundation of that healthcare system, with AI as a force multiplier, as I said, we're going to be in great shape and we're going to see a better day in healthcare.
Very good. So thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Belsher. I really enjoyed our discussion on the future of healthcare. For more information about either Disrupt Health Tech or Visura, please see the links below. Thank you so much for attending today, and see you next episode. Remember, this is just one episode of a 6-part series, and each one will bring you closer to understanding the full picture of health tech innovation. You won't want to miss all 6. Please be sure to subscribe to Disrupt Health Tech so you don't miss a single episode of the series Building Health Tech from Concept to Care. Thank you so much for listening, and join us next time for more insights into the future of healthcare technology.